Hello and welcome at Focus a digital accessibility podcast. My name is Tim Damen and I'm joined today by Dean Birkett, accessibility consultant working currently for KLM, Skyscanner and Marktplaats. Welcome, Dean.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So glad you can join us here. I think we have a lot of things to talk about. Let's dive right into it. My first question is always something around how did you get into accessibility? What got you motivated to improve accessibility in the online space? Curious.
Sure. So that's a big question to start with.
Yeah.
So I think my journey probably started in around about 2010. I took some weird and wonderful career tangents, and ultimately I had a job title of webmaster, which was an interesting one at the time. And I think with that job title, you move into different directions. Some people move into web design, some people move into web development. And myself, I moved into user experience design. And at the time, I was working for a EU-funded organisation, working in the galleries, libraries, archives, and museum sector. And I think having the opportunity of being a UXer in that kind of space gives you lots of flexibility to evolve and move into different directions. And so I was doing UX for about 2 years, and then there was a workshop from Derek Featherstone, who at the time was at Level Access, and I believe he moved to Salesforce. And the workshop was entitled Accessibility for UX Designers. And so for myself, I was a newish UX designer, and accessibility I'd heard of, but I didn't really know a great deal about. So I thought maybe it's an opportunity to learn more about what accessibility is and who it's for. And I look at that moment as being like one of these like career transitions. It was kind of before the workshop and after the workshop. The way that I designed things and thought about things just transformed. And there's lots of things that I learned that I think I still put into practice today in my own workshops and things that I speak about.
All from that first step into accessibility. This course you took or this session you joined. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a powerful statement as well for the impact that these kind of workshops can have.
That's also part of the reason I'm doing the podcast. Also to reach people who know little about accessibility or little to none, inspire them to get to know more about the topic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in this space, the more people speaking about it, the better.
Yeah,
and it is great to get different voices as well from different perspectives and different fields.
Yeah, definitely. I also don't speak a lot. In the podcast, not a lot of UX speciality into UX design yet. So that's also nice to speak from more from the engineering side. So engineering to UX.
So I think UX has got an important part to play, of course. There was a study many moons ago, I think, from DQ, where they uncovered that most accessibility defects that they found were actually originated in design. And so part of the things that I do nowadays is I try to get across the point that accessibility defects can be created throughout the whole software development lifecycle, whether it's in concept, whether it's in design, handover, development.
Yeah, copywriting even.
Everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. Yeah, definitely. I think as an engineer, you're almost at the end of like. So of course you get a design delivered by the UX designer could be, but also and then you implement it, and you as an engineer you're close to the end of the cycle. So you can as an engineer you can also act like a gatekeeper to. If you notice some things, okay, maybe this is not the right way, or this is not, then you are at the end and you can make adjustments or talk to people who need to be involved here. So that's also that I like about the role as a front end developer in this. But how's this perspective from like a UX design?
I mean, from the UX side of things, it's we got to tackle problems earlier, um, because for development, sorry, a lot of things are almost retroactive fixes. Like a bug has been introduced, and it's up to development to retroactively fix that bug
Yeah.
if they uh, didn't play a part in actually creating the bug in the first place. Of course,
Yeah.
there's lots of knowledge gaps that we couldn't have obviously
Yeah.
discuss. But I think from UX, it's kind of recognizing what you can do in design. So the initial concept has to include people with disabilities. The whole experience needs to be centered around the disabled experience, of course, and disabled
Mhm.
voices. And so part of your user research should include people with disabilities, even at an early stage with your research and concepting. And then in the design phase, there are certain things that really basic things that you should be checking for. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm wearing this shirt here, which is
Yeah.
kind of like
Yeah.
low
Yeah.
contrast text on a grey to make a point. Um, and I think that's one of the basic things that designers need to be
Yeah.
checking, and
Yeah.
some don't.
But yeah, some don't. I think a lot of them though, because I think color contrast is the most prominent accessibility default. I think.
Yeah, and you can always point the finger at the designer, but obviously there's so many
Yeah.
steps throughout the way there
Definitely.
where that
Yeah.
should have been
Yeah. Yeah.
prevented. So if there was a contrast issue, that would have been flagged. It could have been flagged in Figma or whatever tool you
Yeah.
used to, or
Yeah.
Stark,
Yeah.
to check the contrast. The handover to the developer they've got the tools to be able to point these out, and they're linting and so forth.
Hmm.
And then obviously when you go live, then you're going to be flagged for pretty much immediately because they're the easiest ones to actually find.
Yeah, definitely. These are also the first ones I point out normally.
Yeah. But in design as well, I mean that you're looking at things like touch target sizes, which are things that designers should have a impact on. They should be designing their touch targets to be tappable.
Hmm.
As you mentioned about content as well, I think the content writers need to be involved in the
Yeah.
discussion at this early stage as well.
Yeah.
And then one of the things that I find often can cause problems is the whole handover experience, where a design could be handed over to say, here is this pretty design. Now, developer, go and build it.
Hmm.
But there's so many things which are missing in that handover,
Yeah.
like the interaction,
Yeah.
the hidden meaning behind content, what you want to
Yeah.
communicate to assistive technology.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think that's the kind of thing that helps to introduce bugs. And if we can tighten up that connection, then I think
Yeah.
that helps.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. What are some So this is some important part about the only the handover, or is there also work involved in an earlier stage in the UX design that can prevent these things from ending up maybe communicated wrongly with the engineering team?
I think there's work in every single step, to be honest. So,
Yeah.
UX designers are very much overwhelmed with having to deliver certain things within a certain time frame. I think it's on project managers to be able to facilitate the need to create this time so that UX designers have time to actually do things properly at the start. Because if you're generating this time at the start, then it prevents retroactively fixing problems further down the path. And I think there's a really old study from IBM Science Institute where they found that a bug which is introduced into the wild is 100 times more costly to fix than it is at an early stage. And so by generating time earlier on, then obviously you actually end up saving money for the organization and saving time.
Yeah. 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 I think that's also what a lot of companies are now uh, working on, trying to catch up with the EAA, are also discovering, because of course they have a lot of legacy, they have a lot of current state applications which, generally speaking, have still a lot of accessibility problems in them. Moving back and trying to remediate them all as some kind of project, I think it's a lot of work. First you need to find them, you need to discuss it. Then you need to make up the right direction and maybe discuss with your UX design. Oh, this color is not good, or we have this other problem. Engineering comes into play afterwards. So there are quite some steps to take
Absolutely.
to get there.
I think it's all about your processes and, improving your processes. There's, if you look at like the digital accessibility maturity models, level access I mentioned already, but, ability now, the W3C, you could use those to get a grasp of where you are in a certain area of your business. So you could use that model to see where you are in your design or development and find out, what your maturity level is. And then you can see what opportunities there are to actually improve that,
Yeah,
further down the line.
yeah.
Procurement and hiring, it's really, really expands beyond digital accessibility, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely, definitely. And what? So you've mentioned already, like linting or plugins or other kinds of other tools that will help you catch accessibility bugs earlier. But what's your opinion about automating? Uh,
Mm,
yeah.
I mean, automated at the moment, you can, I think it's 20 to
Mm-hmm.
40% of
Yeah.
defects that you
Yeah.
can uncover. It requires, from my experience, it requires effort as well to actually set up to make sure that you are actually discovering as many bugs as possible. Because it seems to be, certainly from my experience, it seems to be very easy to detect bugs, which are often flagged. So for me, if I'm doing some kind of like auditing, I would generally start with an automated test just to get a little bit of an understanding as to what kind of issues to be looking out for. But then I would move straight onto manual testing. So I would do keyboard testing, and then I would move on to that. I'd do a cognitive walkthrough, and then I would move on to screen reader testing. Well, that's VoiceOver and Safari or NVDA and Chrome.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have many US clients, and I think Jaws is predominantly
Mm-hmm.
US focused and very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So I put most of my efforts on those two setups. And then obviously, if we're moving on to onto mobile, then the mobile platforms as well, TalkBack and
Yeah. 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 That's and so how many audits do you generally do on a monthly basis?
it depends. I mean, it's part of what I do.
Yeah.
It depends on the client's needs.
Are these like smaller audits or larger ones?
A bit of both, to be honest. I mean, there's no real answer to that one because what I do now is that provide consultancy to various clients on, and I think ultimately it's about um, improving accessibility within their organizations, and whatever that means. And so that could be something like working with the design system, working with the designers, looking at Figma, see what they're creating, to have a bit of feedback on that, to make sure that the accessibility considerations are considered in design, and if so, to make sure that the handover experience to development is communicated correctly. It can also be in documentation. For Skyscanner, I've done a lot of work on the backpack design system. So there's lots of introductions to various roles in the organization as to what accessibility is. And then on the component level, what you need to know to make this component work in the most accessible way. So I think for other organizations, it could be doing auditing. It could be a case of, hey, we need to know where we are with accessibility right now. You mentioned the EAA, and lots of companies are appearing and saying we need a little bit of help. And I think starting with an audit is probably a good idea, just to get a little bit of a benchmark as to where you are. But my goal really is to help them realize that an audit is only part of the answer. You don't want to do an audit and then a year later get another audit and repeat, because that's not
Mm-hmm.
helpful.
Yeah.
And so the way that I approach auditing is that I really work with the teams to help highlight what the problems are, who the problem is actually impacting, why it's a problem, and ways in which you can solve that problem. Um, what I don't do is I don't say, here is a developer issue. This is the code that's causing the problem. Here is the fix,
Mhm.
because that's not helpful.
Mhm.
What I find, certainly in the past, with those kind of audits, is that developers will just input that code and then go away and think about something else. And accessibility really is about, for me, is about making myself less needed, and more about empowering the internal teams to be able to find problems, find
Mhm.
ways to resolve them, and work things out themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's about building knowledge within the organization and empowering the people that, yeah, are doing the on a daily basis, are building stuff. Um, um, so how important do you think training is also?
Hugely important, and I think base level understanding of what we're talking about first of all is helpful, because many accessibility talks they come from two angles, I would say. Um, like internal talks, I mean, the discussions. It's very much either legal focused, what do we need to do to be compliant? Or it's very much a case of developer focus, which is what WCAG violations are we trying to get rid of? And, this is part of the discussion, of course, but it's not, ultimately we need to center the experience around people with disabilities. Um, and I think, taking a step backwards, I mentioned that I was working for Europeana, which was the start of my accessibility journey, I would say. And one of the early projects that I worked on there, where I came at things through an accessibility lens, was a project called the 1914-1918 project. And this was predominantly for people to tell stories about the First World War
Mhm.
and to share their physical objects to
Mhm.
be digitized and shared for people to actually access. And fairly early on, I went to one of these workshops where they was collecting these items, and I saw that I would say 95% of the people at these workshops were very elderly. And so I was able to see people with trying to use a digital device. Maybe their knowledge at the time about technology was a little bit lessened than what it is now. But they would have issues with fine motor control. Maybe there's a little bit of tremors when they're using a mouse. Maybe they're raising their glasses to look at text, and these kind of things. And so for me, coming fresh from this accessibility training, to be able to see, thinking about accessibility affects everybody ultimately. It's not just around people with disabilities, even though it should always be centered around people with disabilities. But what we do actually benefits a wide range of people. Um, and so, I use that kind of like knowledge from that workshop and um, the events that I went to, and what we were able to do is I was able to say, hey, we've got these personas that we're using, which I stole from a web for everyone. I think it was very old book, so I'm not sure how dated that is now. Um, but what it did was it helped frame the discussion. These findings that I was able to present in the workshop, in these events, and I was able to bump up contrast size. I was able to bump up the text size, um, which at the time, in 2012, 2013, I think it was standard for 14 pixels to be body copy. So there was lots of impact that we could do with that. That's during that.
It's interesting. Yeah. So what I personally really like about the UX part on accessibility is that the opportunity you have there to do also UX research. Yeah, and that's, yeah, something I'm not capable of doing, but also do not have the time of doing. It's not in my range of focus, really. But I think you have a lot of experience with doing this research, right? And at the ABN where I work. Um, there's also UX research conducted on a regular basis with different variety of different groups from time to time. Could be maybe people having trouble reading stuff, or low vision, or different groups. And then this research is conducted, research reports created, and then it's communicated into the organization. And then I have the feeling it stops a little bit. So there are the no processes are being shaped, um, as far as I can see. So from the report to like adjusting ways of working. Yeah. I don't see. Do you maybe have some? Yeah, what is your experience with this, and how?
There's so many missed opportunities there, because, you know, these, if you're seeing somebody that's using a product and they're not able to use a product or running into difficulties, that is an amazing snippet video that you can share internally
Yeah.
to get people to be aware of the problems. And you know, I was really blessed in some aspects because of the fact that I was able to firsthand perform user research and to see the impact that design and development can have. And um, you know, there's perhaps two stories which I think are pretty impactful, that resonate with me, and that they were from when I worked at Assistiveware, who are a company based in Amsterdam that build apps for non-verbal people.
Hmm.
And when you think of digital accessibility, your head immediately goes to people with motor impairments, people with vision impairments, maybe people with hearing impairments, and the cognitive space is a little bit not as out there. You know, and they've got task forces for Koga, for instance, but it's still a little bit early days. But you know, people with speech difficulties are kind of like not covered in this kind of space. And so one of the research things that I did, I went to I went to a
Hmm.
cafe in Melbourne in Australia, and I met with somebody who used one of the apps that I work on, uh, and it's or worked on, and it's a language app where you would tap on various buttons, and you would hear a computerized voice which would say something for you. And when I went for a coffee, I met with the mother of this person um, with a very rare illness, who was unable to verbally communicate, and her herself. And the server came to the table and you know, asked what we would like to have to drink. And so I had a long black. The mum, I think, had a flat white, and then it went to the daughter, and she used the app to tap in these buttons and order this drink, which was this amazing
Yeah.
concoction which had sprinkles and marshmallows and all sorts. And I think, you know, for me, sitting there, knowing that
Yeah.
I worked on the design of this app and
Mm.
seeing the impact that
Yeah.
it had not only on the individual, but the parents, the family, the friends, the server. And, you know, I think you know, what we do is often, you know, missed. But you know, as a front end developer,
Hmm.
you're trying to not to create accessibility defects, but you're
Yeah.
not seeing the impact that you're
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
by doing that. And I think another story which is one which will always stick with me is that, again, with this app, there is a way to create a message, and you can send that message to somebody else using messages or WhatsApp or whatever. And one of my former colleagues is a speech language pathologist, and she was working with this young child who was at the early stages of learning how to use this app. And she used the app to type in "I love you, mum," and send that as a text message to her mother who was at work. And it's like those kind of moments are super impactful. And you know, being able to recognize that what we do in accessibility is not about WCAG, it's not about EAA, it's not
Yeah.
about these violations. It's
Yeah.
about people.
Yeah.
It's always about people, and so
Yeah.
you know, it's always about centering the conversations on
Yeah.
people as best as you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah. Yeah. Now about enabling them to do the stuff that you and me are also doing online, or via technology, enabling them to send text messages or order something in a restaurant. And there's there's an unlimited amount of opportunities, I think, also currently out there, right? Like this app or other. I see the most beautiful ideas I see coming by on LinkedIn with also on in terms of automation as well, but also different apps that can recognize sign language or stuff like that. I think there's a there's a big way we can help.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the key thing though is that always center it around people with disabilities. So a lot of these sign language AI things are probably created by white, able-bodied, cis, hetero, this default human, as we've led to believe. Whereas, it's always, if you're working in accessibility, it's people with disabilities that should be leading and we should be assisting. And when you mentioned about the research thing, if you have stories or snippets or things, you should always bring those. You should hear firsthand from people, and so that's how you can help
Mm,
with helping your teams to understand what accessibility is, why it's important, and why we're doing it.
yeah.
And then as accessibility grows within your organizations, it's again it's about employment. Hire people with disabilities. It brings a personal thing to the problem. It's kind of like we're not solving problems for this in this person that we don't see firsthand. I had the ability to work with people with disabilities and to
Hmm.
see firsthand.
Yeah.
But if you have a person that's working in HR that is blind, then you are solving problems for this person that you work with. Makes it more personable. And one of my clients, for instance, I work with another accessibility consultant, and he's blind, and we work together on the design system. And I think that's awesome. The fact that we've got a blind person working on a design system,
Mm,
it brings into question. Okay, so what is design?
yeah.
Because people think of design very much as a visual language, and design is way beyond a visual
Yeah.
language. And
Yeah.
I think by recognizing that fact is helps the organizations to move on their journey.
Yeah. Definitely. And about this journey, so you've worked with a lot of big companies, a lot of different ones as well, different sectors. Some maybe are more mature than others in terms of accessibility. What are some things you recognize from a company that is really mature versus a company that's maybe just starting out?
Having dedicated people
Mm.
working on the team is very helpful. One of the people that one of the companies that I support at the moment is Skyscanner. They have a dedicated accessibility lead, Heather, who is awesome, and an engineer lead as well, Gert. And they're both people that know the importance of accessibility and help others in the organization recognize it. And so from that, they're able to internally create a champions network where other people are involved in that, in understanding what impact their roles have and how they can help. And it just balloons. And that knowledge is not it's not just within one person or one advocate. It becomes a big wider thing. But to get there, you definitely need, you can try and do a bottom up approach, but realistically, it's got to be coming from management to say that this is important.
Yeah.
Um, and that is really, really helpful
Yeah.
because, it helps generate budget, it helps generate awareness, and that will ultimately, uh, you know, end up with your maturity level increasing.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've permanent people assigned, senior management assigned to accessibility, um, for budget and capacity and stuff like that. Um, I think from and then through this champion network, you can find some people that also want to work on accessibility and that you can inspire, and together coming together and working together, discussing problems and solving them. And yeah, that's also something I recognize within my own organization.
Yeah, and I think, you know, there's companies out there like Intuit, Ted Drake, who I think pretty much came up with this model, and you know, Mark Lepole at eBay. Um, and you know, you can see the impact of the maturity of these organizations, you know, and they, you know, the benchmark. I think what's really nice as well with Skyscanner, so from my own personal perspective, is, you know, I would attend an accessibility event and I would hear somebody outside of the sector talking about Skyscanner as being an organization to look up to.
mm,
And I think you know, that's really good to
yeah,
recognize as well, that you know, by doing this, you reach not only a wider an audience, but people recognize what you're actually doing as well.
yeah, 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 for sure, sure. And but Skyscanner has been prioritizing accessibility for a longer time than already. Way for how many years you've been with them?
So I've been supporting Skyscanner for around about 3 years, and I think Heather's probably been in the lead position for 4 or 5 years. Um, and yeah, you can see over time, you know, how that's evolved, and the conversations that we have are different as well, and the problems that we're trying to solve are different. So for many organizations who are very early in their journey, you know, conversations may talk about color contrast. They may talk about these fairly low hanging fruits. They may
Mhm.
talk about, okay, how do we make this an improved experience for visually impaired screen reader users?
Yeah.
You know, and at more mature organizations, we're thinking about things like, how do we um, include people with vestibular disorders into this?
Mhm.
How do we make sure that the button that we have created works not only for visually impaired screen reader users, but also includes people who use voice as their input? So there's lots of different discussions
Mhm.
that you have
Mhm.
where the maturity level is a little bit higher than, you know, less mature organizations.
Yeah. 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 Mm. Um, there's this thing called accessibility by design. If you would start like a new project or a new um, completely redo something, you have the opportunity to do accessibility from the start. Um, What are some what are some things, what are some processes you think are good to incorporate into your development life cycle, um, to reach something like accessible by design?
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the things that I would try and focus on is the fact that we talk about inclusion a lot in what we do. And maybe I'm a little bit combative, but I think there's an opportunity to talk about exclusion. And it kind of like changes the perspective of people when you actually use that word. And so if you're doing a kickoff meeting for a new project or a new feature or whatever, you know, rub your hands. It's like, who are we going to exclude today? It, you know, changes the dynamic of the room, but it also, you know, changes the conversation a little bit, because we don't want to exclude people. You know, our company doesn't exclude people, yet we do unwillingly. And so if you can think about things like kind of like the almost the opposite of what you're trying to do, then it can help to actually ensure that that doesn't happen. So that's one thing. The other thing that I think is really important as well is the start is, again, and I may be repeating myself a little bit here, but it's also recognizing the fact that it's why we're doing it. It's not for legal. It's not for, you know, all these purposes that we tend to focus on. It's because we want to make something work for people with disabilities. Um, and so I think, you know, framing the discussions early on is kind of like a key thing to help you move forward a little bit easier.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, including and testing with people with disabilities, I think is something you've mentioned a couple of times, and I think it's also very important to do. In my organization, we have two main accessibility testers. They both have visual impairment, so they are really advanced using the screen reader and braille controls, and it's so really eye opening to see that. from just working together with them and testing. Um, yeah, they're just colleagues of mine, and so this is really they are really accessible to me as well. That which is really nice, but also sometimes it's harder to find people from outside of the organization to test the product with. How 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 would you handle something like connecting with the right people? How do you do this?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on budget, of course.
Hmm.
There are agencies out there that it's their main goal to
Yeah.
to recruit. People like Fable, for instance, in
Hmm.
in, in Canada. Um, it went ahead next to no budget or low budget. You kind of like do as much kind of guerrilla testing as you can, and you find methods to try and recruit people with disabilities to take part in the tests. So at Assistiveware, for instance, one of the things that I did was, or sorry, one of the things that they did before I arrived was that they had two Facebook groups for people that use the app and also for people like professionals. And so I would just send a message. It's like, hey, there's something I want to talk about. Is there anybody willing to help me with this?
Hmm.
So that was something that I would do. Um, I noticed somebody posted on LinkedIn from an organization I don't work for, but what they did was they just put out a call, say, "Hey, we're trying to improve our experience with this. Is anybody willing to help us?"
Hmm.
And so these
Hmm.
are fairly,
Hmm.
accessible ways to attempt to recruit people, of course. And then if you've got the budget, that like I say, there are organizations out there that can certainly help you spend that budget.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Also, from what I see within my organization, how we connect, also with our users. We have a lot of users in the Netherlands, so we try to connect with them, and most of the time they are willing to help out.
Absolutely. I find this as well. Ultimately, I look at everything as like we're all on the same team trying to achieve an objective. And I think, it's a good objective to try and achieve. So yeah, any kind of like ways to reach people, to include people in the discussions, and ideally work with you on solving these problems is the way forward. I think it's something that eventually, well, hopefully, businesses will start to recognize that fact. It's great that you've got two internal people who are able to support you, and they're supporting you with, the non-visual experience, which is great. They're also expert users, as you mentioned, um, but it's recognizing the fact that everything is intersectional. There are visually impaired screen reader users who don't really know how to use a screen reader. There are people who are sighted who use a screen reader.
Yeah,
So there are lots and lots of different kind of like people that we need to be talking to ensure that
yeah,
we're considering the needs of others.
yeah, 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 definitely. Looking into the future, maybe a little bit. What are do you see some notable trends maybe in the accessibility space today, or that you would think um, are maybe a good trend or something that could help solve some problems?
Um, Notable and worrying, I think, are kind of aligned at the moment. So there's a lot of there's a big shift to AI, which is going to solve everything apparently. Um, and the reality is that with where we are at the moment, it's more problematic than anything else. Um, I don't know if you've used any kind of like language models to check code, and you may get some kind of like feedback which looks semi-accessible, and then you realize that it's not accessible at all. And I think that kind of stuff is happening in the space. Lots of companies are claiming to improve automated accessibility testing because of AI. Um, these are high, these are noble claims, and it's great when we get there, but we're not going to get there tomorrow, if we ever get there, which I don't think we will.
Yeah.
But
To me, it's really nice if because some of these companies do this or advertise with it, because then I can spot out the ones that are not serious to me. Yeah,
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 absolutely, and I'm not going to do any name calling here, but
yeah.
it's also it also gives you an idea of where the motivations lie as well. You know, is it about is it really about making products as accessible as possible, or is it really about how many dollars are you going to bring into the organization? Which sadly is, is something that needs to be raised within the accessibility community. There are some players in the space who have shifted maybe more to the side that we don't really want them to shift to.
Mhm. Yeah. So with AI, you're more leaning negatively currently on it?
No, I think it's I think cautiously optimistic rather than negatively, but
Mhm.
at the moment we are not there,
No.
and we're not going to be there tomorrow. And so I think AI can be useful to support accessibility efforts, but not lead accessibility efforts. I think AI could provide value in certain areas, certainly, like for um, as long as you recognise the blind spots which you have um, that you have. So, for instance, um, if you are looking at using AI for alternative text, then make sure that the alternative text that you are getting out of it is actually good alternative text, and it's not just something that AI has decided
Mm.
upon.
Yeah. Yeah. It is some ways it also can also speed up um some processes. So for coming up with alt text, for example, so you still need to check it, of course, very much so. But it could speed you up a little bit. Same with, for example, um, I forgot the name. Um, Same with other processes that can be semi-automated with AI, and then of course, you check it thoroughly, and then yeah, it could speed up your processes a little bit. One of the nice features or uses of AI I've seen lately was from a colleague within my organization. He is blind, but he's a backend engineer. So he works on the back end of the ABN AMRO with Java, I guess. He was showing me his way of working and how he's set up his code editor and how he's using the different tools. And he was actually utilizing the GitHub Copilot
Hmm.
in his editor quite a lot because he got some nice prompts ready to go to tell him, this file. Um, Explain me what's happening in this file or something like that. That's what something was he was. And it was uh, to me it looked very simple, but to him the information that he got out of it was very useful for him and really improved his way of working. So that was I thought that was really nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I think you've just got to have that knowledge to understand what you are seeing. And so, if you pump in some information, you pump in a prompt and you get something back. It's not a copy and paste kind of thing. You have to understand what
yeah,
you're being presented here. And at the moment, with from what I'm seeing, is a lot of things that come out of these language models are very much um, they could be accessible-ish. They may look as though they're accessible, but without recognizing what defects they could be introducing is. I mean, I'm sure you saw the uproar about Figma sites
yeah,
with the code
yeah,
that
yeah,
they were pumping
yeah,
out.
yeah. Some nice tips.
Yeah,
Yeah,
lots of divs and lots of
yeah,
aria, which
yeah,
wasn't needed, and
yeah,
all of
yeah,
these things
yeah,
that if you don't know anything about that side of things,
yeah,
or if you do but don't think about accessibility, don't consider it,
yeah.
then you're just polluting the web even further
Yeah,
than it
yeah, yeah,
already is.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I call it sometimes the big inflation of elements, HTML elements. Also due to now front-end frameworks, it's very easy to just go big on creating a lot of HTML, a lot of code rapidly, just bloating the web with lots of different things,
Yeah.
which mostly are not accessible. Yeah, and you also, of course, have the site on AI that it's trained on a lot of stolen data.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's lots of things where you have to be very, very aware, and also it's kind of like, you, what isn't that? What sorry, what is the data that is you've collected? What are what are the things that you have not considered as part of that data? And so it's, going beyond accessibility. You think about this. I can't even remember the name now. Um, but there are AI specialists, which are people of color who have basically said that the training data that you're getting is excluding myself. And so, who else are you excluding with that training data? People with disabilities will be excluded for sure, but there's a wide range of people that will be kind of like not involved in that discussion or not involved in that data where they need to be involved in it.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. All right. I think we're about to wrap up. Some of the last things I always ask to my guests are um, share some last inspiring message to folks out there, just some fellow accessibility people working on UX, maybe engineering as well, or some other part. Sometimes can be very hard to work on accessibility, especially if I look to myself. If you try to do inspire or reach out to a lot of different teams at the same time, try to help them in various different ways, can be daunting also because the progress might seem slow a little bit.
Mm.
Yeah, what would you say to these people?
It's baby steps. Any
Mhm.
change that you're doing, as long as it's a change, is a positive change in the right direction. So even if you are a designer that's working on a product, and you tweak your button to make sure that it's a little bit bigger, or the contrast changes, that's an impact. You're going to have a positive impact on somebody. You may not be recognizing that because you don't have the user research to back that up, but you are making that impact. And I think the other thing that I probably would really highlight, and I think this comes from a UX background, is the fact that it is about the experience. And so in accessibility, we often say we are being accessible, but being accessible is often shorthand for compliant. We are WCAG compliant, and being accessible is not WCAG compliant. And so recognizing that conformance does not equal experience is probably something else that's really useful.
Yeah, yeah. All right, thank you. Last question. So, how now that I think about it, so how accessible is not linked to VCAC? Of course. How but being accessible, is it something you can achieve at all, or is there always something to do, or how far away from being accessible, like on a high maturity level, I would say, away from WCAG, for example, um, how long of a path you think there is to improve? Do you see WCAG as a baseline, and where these are the default basic things you need to do, and then a lot of user research?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
WCAG has its purposes, and I'm glad that it's there, but it's also it's part of the what we're trying to do. I think if you look at the accessible design, if you look at universal design, the thinking about that is to make things work for as many people as possible. It's not building for everybody, because it's not possible to build for everybody. But if you can recognize what people you are excluding, and if they are excluded, then what can you do to try and remove those barriers? I think those are really key things to aim to achieve.
Thanks again. Thanks for joining us. If people want to find you online, where can they find you?
Pretty much LinkedIn, I guess, is
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
is the easiest place to find me. And then yeah, the accessibility Slack channel, which most of the accessibility community
Yeah,
will already be a member of.
yeah, yeah.
I'm usually in those places.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Thanks for all the insights and a great conversation. And to listeners out there, if you like what we do, please consider liking, subscribing, whatever, following us, and to keep up to date with the latest episodes. And hope to see you next time as well. All right, thanks.
Thanks, Ian.